You'd think an acre of Napa Valley vineyard worth up to $1 million is one of the safest investments money can buy. Actually, last year, California growers ripped out 40,000 of those acres on purpose because nobody would buy the wine growing on them. Here's the part nobody's selling you the Napa Valley fantasy mentions. A winery isn't one business. It's two businesses, stapled together, wearing the same label. One of them is farming, the other is luxury retail. And most people who buy a winery only understand the second one right up until the first one bankrupts them. So let's talk about what it actually costs to own one, why the money almost never comes from where you think, and why two of the most famous people on the planet ended up suing each other over a bottle of rosé. Start with the land because the land is the trap. In the best parts of Napa, an acre of planted vineyard can run you close to $1 million. Even in the cheap appellations like Carneros, you're still looking at $80,000 an acre. Drive an hour north to Mendocino County, and that same acre drops to $14,000 same state, same grapes, 1/70th the price. Because Napa isn't selling soil. It's selling the name on the label. Now buy the land, and you still don't have a winery. According to an extension economist at the University of Georgia, building a small premium winery from scratch, the tanks, the crush pad, the office, the receiving equipment runs about $2 million, spread over the first 4 years before you've sold a single bottle. Then come the barrels. A single new French oak barrel from a top cooperage like Taransaud runs somewhere around $850 to $3,600. A small luxury producer making about 1,000 cases a year needs roughly 40 new ones every single year forever, because a barrel only flavors wine for 2 or 3 uses before it's neutral. That's tens of thousands of dollars a year just so your wine tastes like the inside of a tree. And this year, Napa added a new bill. The county just started charging vineyard owners just under $99 for every irrigated acre every year as part of a new state groundwater law on top of everything else. So if you can survive the land, the building, and the barrels, where is the actual profit supposed to come from? Here's the mechanism almost nobody outside the industry understands. Selling a bottle of wine to a distributor, who sells it to a store, who sells it to you that's called wholesale, and it hands the winery a margin of maybe 25 to 40%. Selling that same bottle yourself in your own tasting room, or shipping it straight to someone's door through a wine club that's called direct-to-consumer. And it can pay the winery 65 to 80%. Same bottle, same grapes, more than double the money just by controlling who's standing between you and the customer. And wine clubs specifically have quietly become the real engine of the entire American wine industry. As of a couple years ago, club shipments actually overtook tasting room walk-in sales for the first time, and now make up nearly 40% of all direct-to-consumer revenue. The average winery wine club carries close to 1,700 members. Translation: the real skill in owning a winery isn't growing grapes, it's convincing strangers to sign up for a subscription and stay subscribed. Which brings us to two people who found out exactly how messy that who controls the business question can get. In 2008, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie bought a 17th century estate in the south of France called Château Miraval, eventually paying about $28,400,000 to fully own it. They got married there. They made rosé there. And the wine business actually worked. Revenue reportedly grew from around $3 million in 2013 to more than $50 million by 2021. Then, in 2021, Jolie sold her half of the winery to a company tied to the Jolie group, without Pitt claims his consent. What followed was years of lawsuits, countersuits, a company accusing Pitt of treating the winery like his personal fiefdom, and dueling claims worth anywhere from $35 million to $250 million, over an estate some analysts have valued as high as $500 million. If two of the wealthiest people in Hollywood couldn't cleanly split a winery that was actually profitable, what happens to everyone else who buys one without a plan for who's actually in charge? Most winery owners never get anywhere near that level of success or that level of drama. Take Dave Massoni, whose family had farmed grapes near Healdsburg, California, for more than 150 years. Last year, at 66 years old, he decided to leave the business entirely and moved to Nevada, one of thousands of growers pushed out as California worked through a historic glut. Between October 2024 and August 2025 alone, growers ripped out more than 38,000 acres of vines statewide because wineries were sitting on roughly 84 million excess cases of unsold wine. And some growers were selling their grapes for as little as $500 a ton, barely enough to cover the cost of picking them. Then there's the guy who figured out the opposite strategy entirely. Fred Franzia ran Bronco Wine Company out of California's Central Valley cheapland, machine harvesting, oak chips instead of barrels. In 2002, right in the middle of an earlier grape glut, he struck an exclusive deal with Trader Joe's to sell a wine called Charles Shaw for $1.99 a bottle. Buck Chuck went on to sell more than 1 billion bottles, and Bronco is now estimated to bring in around $500 million a year built on grapes that cost him almost nothing, and a bottle that costs roughly $1.50 to make. Even that empire isn't bulletproof, though Bronco announced more than 80 layoffs at its headquarters earlier this year, citing a sharp downturn in revenue. So a 150-year farming family got squeezed out, and the man who mastered the $2 bottle is still cutting jobs. What's actually left standing in between? Let's do the math on two versions of the same 10-acre winery, because the difference isn't the grapes, it's the sales channel. Scenario 1, the Napa Dream, sold mostly wholesale. 10 acres of land in a mid-tier Napa appellation runs about $3 million. Add roughly $2 million to build the winery itself. That's $5 million in startup capital before a single bottle ships. Now say you produce 2,000 cases, 24,000 bottles a year, and sell almost all of it wholesale at around $20 a bottle. That's $480,000 in revenue. At a 30% wholesale margin, you're left with about $144,000 in gross profit before debt service on $5 million, before the new water fees, before barrels, before payroll. In a glut year, when Chardonnay grapes are trading for $500 a ton, just to break even, that math gets worse, not better. Scenario 2. Same 10 acres, same grapes, but you build a tasting room and a wine club instead of chasing distributors. You sell the same 24,000 bottles, but 80% of it goes direct, full retail, around $35 a bottle instead of $20. That's roughly $670,000 in revenue. At a 70% direct-to-consumer margin instead of 30% wholesale, your gross profit jumps to about $470,000. Same land, same grapes, same 10 acres. More than 3 times the profit because you stopped selling wine and started selling a subscription with a view. So the next time someone hands you a free pour in a tasting room, that pour isn't hospitality, it's the only part of the entire operation that's actually working. Everywhere else, land is worth a fortune nobody can cash out of. Barrels cost more than most people's cars, and every year tens of thousands of acres of vines get torn out of the ground because there's simply too much wine and not enough people buying it. Owning a winery isn't a retirement plan. It's a hospitality business that happens to grow its own inventory. And if you can't get strangers to keep paying for the view, the land underneath it is worth more empty than planted. If you want to see which dream business we're taking apart next, subscribe because the next one might be even worse than this.